2016, a romantic fantasy, written and narrated by Stephen Bishop. Bit of a backstory first. It's about a online relationship that turned into something real, very real. So, Chapter 1. This all began in the final year of the Bush administration in the US. His old mate Larry sits alone in his old single-room flat, all lovelorn and lonely. He wasn't really searching for a mate, but he's just conversing with randoms he'd met online. In this particular year, he'd acquired new technology. He upgraded himself, year 2008 technology, upgraded himself in such ways, speeding up his broadband so he could watch some YouTube videos without buffering. A new set-top box so he could record stuff. And an external hard drive for his computer and a DVD burner and a flash drive. Back then it cost about $50 for a little stick. Well, it seems all primitive now, but looking back, it was a big deal for him. He'd just gotten his first brand new mobile phone the previous year with his own number. The number is still active, but over the ensuing years he'd upgraded to smartphones and iPhones and Samsung. One day in July 2008, he was browsing this single site and came across a particular thread where people could comment on theological and political matters, etc. The particular one was a discussion posted by an American lady about the end times vision of Tommy Hicks. It invited several comments, both critical and supportive, and one particular savage bulldog got nasty and called it heresy and various other vicious names. Larry chivalrously leapt to her defence, seeing the original nickname she used was inspired to compose a song based loosely on the name she gave herself, which sounded like a pop tune from his birth year. Larry's rewording of it must have touched her in such a way that he had no clue. Her public reaction was encouraging, but they started messaging each other privately. Still, poor Larry had no clue except that he had kicked some goal and touched a lady's life in such a way as to win him a warm friend. After a short exchange of emails, she revealed her name as Kylie. All the prettiest girls' names start with a K. Now, Larry was a big fan of a particular Australian singer by that name, so it suited him just fine to have a personal lady friend with a K name. A few years later, she sent Larry a picture of herself and some pictures. A few weeks later, she sent Larry a picture of herself and some pictures of her children. It was some years ago, but Larry, in an effort to avoid any prospects of a rushed romantic infatuation, decided not to save the pictures. Silly boy. It would be almost another year before he would see how contemporary Kylie would have looked in her late noughties, the 2000s decade. Shortly after this, what would become known as the global financial crisis would break around the world, right on the eve of American presidential election. Around Christmas Eve, they finally got to hear each other's voices. Kylie sounded as cute as ever with a southern accent. Larry introduced her to his Australian accent and some Australian music. So far, he'd written only one song, and things wouldn't really blossom in the poetry department for another 7 weeks. Kylie had informed her new friend she was leaving on a mission trip to India. He managed to remember right up to 2 nights before her departure as he went to bed. Next morning, he woke to an email from Kylie saying the trip had been cancelled due to a family emergency. 1 week later, some cold atoms of gold were permanently disconnected from the warm flesh of Kylie's skin. Right about the exact time of this non-surgical procedure, Larry was listening to the vocals of Taylor Swift for the first time. A love story is born. In 2016, a romantic fantasy, Chapter 2. Larry has now decided he's in love with this lady, but he's scared because of many knockbacks he'd received. He's hesitant to drop the L-bomb. It's a big week ahead. He started his job at an electrical store selling mobile phones. President Barack Obama is inaugurated in the US. Right around the time of the inauguration, Larry is engaged in a fortuitous chat with Kylie. 20 minutes out from the inauguration ceremony, Kylie gets a phone call from her mother. Poor Larry's sitting there hoping he'll be chatting with his lady love right when the president is being sworn in. A great irony happened 4 years later when an Australian Prime Minister was being sworn in, and Larry is sitting at a newer computer in another residence he could not have predicted he'd be living in, chatting with this same love of his life. A greater hand must be guiding these events, and the happy couple know who. Back to the inauguration, Larry's internet got knocked offline. He doesn't know how, but he couldn't chat with his Kylie. She might have still been on the phone with Mum. So at 4 a.m. in Australia on a warm summer's morning, Larry is sitting in front of his TV watching the inauguration of an American president alone. Ceremony over, he tries again to get back online. It worked, but Kylie's gone. He sends her an email, retires back to sleep. She's worried that he was mad at her for talking to her mum on the phone. Poor dear, Larry will never get mad over that. About 10 days later, he's chatting with her again, and the word baby slips out, like a term of endearment. This just flatters her soul or flutters her heart. We have word it still does to this day. She's all aflutter, he might say. Something has ignited a fire in poor Larry's heart as he's asked her for a picture, and here's where it gets sticky.
Moonset in Gunda.
And the moon just said, I sent you a picture when we first started chatting, replied Kylie. Oh, Larry was trying to protect himself from rushing too quickly into anything. He's kicking himself now. Kylie's teasing him. But it's a trait of me, keep him keen principle. She uses it to great effect, this Kylie. February 9. The L-bomb. The conversation has gotten a bit mushy by this stage, and the eager Larry is only too obliged to let his feelings be known. 5 days go by until Kylie reciprocates. She's smart. She waited for Valentine's Day, midnight her time. During that week, Larry had resumed his poetic flair and composed another great masterpiece. The following weekend, Larry heads down south for a family event. His cousin is getting married. He's just excited to talk to Kylie with their mobile phones, texting and emailing, never too far apart with these devices. Over the following month, Larry turns 40. He gets his first smartphone, an iPhone. He made sure the first text message he sent on it was Kylie, and she sent one back with the words, I love you. The relationship went on like this for the rest of the year. Larry was writing many love-inspired songs for Kylie. Some days they'd chat for hours, some days he didn't hear from her at all, but it made his heart grow fonder. Another big sad event to happen in the world around the middle of 2009 was the death of the singer Michael Jackson. It rocked our world. Something really bad happened when he finally beat it. One day in his life turned out to be his last. He had finally stopped when he got enough. His human nature got him addicted to propofol, which eventually put him in a state of shock. He wanted to be starting something of a comeback, but many conspiracy theorists thought he'd been struck by a smooth criminal. Right at the end of this year, Larry was evicted from his small bedsit he'd called home for 20 years because the landlord wanted to renovate downstairs. He moved to a bigger place elsewhere in town, about 5 times the size, which suits him just nice. His penthouse, he dubbed it, because it was upstairs. He looked all over for penthouses on the ground floor, but couldn't find any. It has an east-facing balcony for the bedroom and one facing north from the lounge room. It also has a spare guest bedroom. He can definitely see himself entertaining Kylie when she comes over to visit him. They've made plans, but sometimes plans get on hold because of lack of finances or whatever, but they never gave up hope. Kylie has lived life this past year as a single American mum with 2 beautiful daughters, Melanie and Jennifer. They're all living happily peaceful in Obama's America. Kylie and the girls spend a lot of their time painting the house they're living in. Living has become expensive everywhere as a result of the so-called GFC. If that sounds like a profanity, you're not far wrong. It's caused a lot of people to curse. End of chapter 3. The 2010s, a decade of hope. It's hoped Larry will meet Kylie sometime before it's through. He turned to a modern-day Orpheus, composing enough love songs and poetry for his Eurydice to fill a book. So that's just what he did. All inspired and personal and from his heart. He was able to win her over in his way, and it just turned into a never-ending stream of love in word form. Some he put to music, but mostly it was full of soppy romantic lore. He had composed it all with handwriting and sent it across the sea to his love. Kylie treasured it with all her heart. It took her several years before she could send him anything equally tangible. Later this year, Kylie gets a Facebook account. His friends are connected but keep their love a secret. Larry lives in hope. Faith, hope and love is what it's all about. The years fly by and it's up to 2013. Now a very rare event of Larry and Kylie conversing via Facebook. Instant messaging has become precious. Just as the President of the United States 4 years earlier was being sworn in while the lovers were conversing over the internet, it's now the turn of an Australian Prime Minister and his cabinet being sworn in. Kylie is there with Larry to share the moment. It's a poignant moment for the politically savvy Larry. He'll keep his lady up on all the world events and whatever is affecting his nation. Christmas 2013. Kylie has sent Larry a gift for the first time, an online shopping voucher he spent wisely on something that he could use. It'll be kept a secret in this novel. The following year, Kylie has landed herself a job and commenced to save madly for the big trip. They agreed to meet for her 40th birthday in 2015, but something happened to both of them which took a drastic turn in their relationship and caused plans to be put on hold. Larry has found himself a job in a radio station for a weekly interview and a flashback segment where he can share his extensive memory capability and knowledge of world and music history. He's grateful for the opportunities he's given and received rave reviews from listeners. Who knows? By the time Kylie gets here to visit him, she may well be with him in the studio when he does his thing. Larry dreams of one day hosting a show of his own where he can play more music and really learn the ropes of a radio studio. The computer-controlled setup they have nowadays is just the awesome technology you'd want in your home and job environment. The only difference is you get paid to use the equipment and you didn't have to pay for it yourself. Yes! In the latter half of 2014, Larry has met some new friends and Kylie was also introduced to a local love interest closer to home. So, as happened frequently over the previous 6 years of their friendship, Kylie was giving herself a chance at love, as also Larry had the right to pursue. Kylie got lucky. She's introduced to this dude, we'll just call him Snoop, because that's what he might have turned out like later on. Unbeknownst to Kylie at this time, she's smitten with Snoop and they commence a brief courtship, engaged 2 months later and hurriedly married. This broke Larry's heart, but he was to meet someone new in his life, and he'll be off to the UK in 2015. Kylie moved in with Snoop, her new man, in November 2014. After a few months they moved to Kentucky. He likes the old finger-licking chicken. Things a bit tricky as Snoop turned out to be the other half of his rapper namesake, a dog. Narcissistic temperament. She'd been sold a complete dud and was stuck with this guy till they can get a D-word. It's another sad chapter in poor Kylie's life. She's had a rough trot, and Larry across the ocean has been there to support her. Fresh from his British adventure, he's saving madly for another trip. Chapter 4. End of chapter. Relations with Larry's friend in the UK deteriorated in time, and he decided while things were rocky with Kylie and the Snoop, he wouldn't meddle, much like 7 years earlier when they met. He bides his time. In December 2015, he heads off to Brisbane to catch up with his old schoolmate Kel, and they talk about old times and music they loved when they were in high school. Kel has an overseas love interest, same as Larry. Only Kel and she had already met physically and making plans to bring her to Australia to live with him permanently. Larry took the train. It was a long ride each way and reminded him of the plane flight to the UK and back. But this would have only been a 9-hour drive. He had a car and could drive. Larry is tossing up goals for the coming year. Will he save his money and go to the US to meet Kylie for the first time? Or will she book a flight and come to Australia as they'd always wanted? The decision is swinging in favour of a visit to the US in 2016. He's shopping around for airfares and finding they cost not much more than his flight to the UK. It's Larry's life and he wants to accomplish some stuff before he turns 50. It's over the hill from there, he reckons. Larry's just excited to be talking to his Kylie again. His feelings for her never went away, only shelved while she was wasting her time with the wrong men who treated and did her wrong. Larry could not comprehend them not seeing Kylie what he could. She's priceless. It was personal torture for him to see his precious shorty being battered about emotionally. For the time being, as of the end of 2015, it's on again. As for sweet Kylie across the sea, she's getting lovelier and more excited by the day. Larry is saying frantically and managed to accumulate his fare enough to book his ticket. No turning back. For at least a month in the arms of his true love. He's going to visit her in the deep south and samples hers and the local hospitality as they always planned. Kylie's a free woman reunited with both her daughters whom she loves and they love their mum and just as excited to meet this mystery man who's had her heart all these years. He's mad and keen to meet her girls and any other family and friends who want to meet him. They plan to travel around the southern parts of the US and see things Larry had always wanted to see. Kylie's not your American cliche. Just go visit all the things the foreign tourists want to see when they go to the States. Here we've got a sample of how the real America lives. Should be warm enough for this time of year. He's timed it for an arrival before the 4th of July. He's excited once again at Sydney Airport, just like last year. Only a year earlier he was taking off the UK. Now he's back over to the States. Last time he flew in a Chinese airline. Now it's United Airlines and a connecting flight with the US domestic carrier from Los Angeles on the mainland to Atlanta. 3 Olympic host cities in under 24 hours. Chapter 5. So it's up and away. Larry's headed east towards an azure blue sky. He'll be arriving in Atlanta on a Saturday morning. During the dark part of the journey, Larry hopes to get some sleep. He listens to some music stored on his flash drive and composes some poetry for his lover. This novel was composed in January 2016, timing the arrival of the fictitious Larry for the Saturday of the 4th of July weekend. Australia's election day in 2016 was announced in May. The election was 2nd of July. Just before the plane descends into LA, there's an emergency on board. A child is sick a few seat rows behind Larry and screaming as its hysterical mother, the slim Latina. They were getting off here anyway. She looked like a turn of the century Jennifer Lopez, probably late 20s or so. In this era of aviation, when somebody's sick on board a plane, there's all kinds of quarantine and health issues to hold the passengers up. You can never be too careful. The urgent passengers are whisked off first. Larry will never see J-Lo or Baby again, but it could have been his shorty on another flight and time. He's thinking of loved ones back home. This is a big trip to meet the lovely Kylie, whom he had known for 8 years now. They both wasted so much time on the wrong people, and Larry owed it to her to let her meet him during this lifetime. Los Angeles Transit Lounge. He's had to wait 2 hours to board the next plane across the mainland. No going back now. It's onward and eastward towards his destiny. Atlanta or bust. He thinks he might get some sleep this time. Sleeping on a plane is tricky at best, but he manages very peacefully. They are airborne about an hour when breakfast is served. There's a pleasant dawn glow, much like the sunset he saw the previous night. They're way above the clouds, so the sky will be blue. The captain tells them the weather in Atlanta will be warm and sunny. Kind of weather you'd like to fall in love under. He imagined all the beautiful things he would do with his love when he got there. These things Larry dreamt about on his way across the water. Now he's munching on something sweet and cannot get the smile off his face. He lands around lunchtime. Larry's fixing up his clothes to impress his girl. He's going to meet her on his arrival. Woo! He hasn't been this excited since he can't remember when. The clock is ticking. Kylie is driving with her daughters to the airport terminal to meet up with Larry. Her heart is beating with the expectancy of one on her first blind date. This will be both, but she's waited 8 years to meet his mystery man who has held her heart in his hand all this time. They've waited patiently for it to pay off. Larry is just as nervous as he disembarks his plane through customs and the usual precautions, baggage carousel and waiting lounge. Kylie turns up the terminal, finds his incoming flight and the arrivals lounge. Palpitations. He sees her. She runs to embrace. The red, beating, animated heart above them is almost visible. Many an airport security camera has caught moments such as this, but usually black and white and the characters have no names. I'd hate to think what elevator cameras picked up. Aerosmith, anyone? They embrace. Forearms feel like 8 intertwined. Lips have connected. Let's hope souls have as well. Their only care in the world is the baggage at their feet. Somehow has to carry it out, and they forlornly resign themselves as going to have to be them. His lover picks up some of her luggage. Larry handles the heavier items, and off they go through the airport to a car or to their destiny together. Kylie has organised a rendezvous with some of her friends and relatives to meet with Larry and her to have lunch together. Her best friends are from her church, and love is unconditional. Larry trusts her family like his own and holds them close to his heart. Larry will be walking around holding hands with Kylie. They'll be smiling at each other and the fine Atlanta weather and wildlife. All these touristy places the wonderful city has to offer. The food is wonderful. Kylie, Larry and their friends ate this sumptuous seafood at this wonderful restaurant. They showed Larry all he could fit in an afternoon. Coca-Cola, CNN, Martin Luther King, Civil War Museum, Margaret Mitchell, Gone with the Wind, one of Larry's favourite movies. Kylie was just so delighted to show him around. Evening awaits. They're finally alone together. The girls have gone with their friends to spend the evening together while Larry and Kylie get some alone time. Larry needs a shower and rest. Perhaps a change of clothes. They've had a full day, so they order dinner. Small Chinese takeaway which can be delivered to their room. They haven't stopped talking or kept out of physical contact since the airport. The television is turned down to a soft volume. Larry has dimmed the lights. Kylie is in her most comfortable clothing. Larry folds their used clothing neatly and drapes it across the chair at the foot of the bed. Kylie smiles at this neat gesture of a gentleman. This is the man she wants to spend the rest of her life with. Several hours of this harmless banter and chatter finds them still in each other's arms. Final kisses exchanged and they doze off and embrace at the end of Larry's first day in the land of the free. Chapter 6. Chapter 5. Still dozing peacefully, the light outside is getting brighter with the dawn ascent of the golden orb. It peeps bashfully over the horizon and in between the curtains of their room. Kylie stirs first and startles the snoring Larry. He lifts his head and remembers where he is. A smile slaps his lips and he energetically turns to face his true love, looking adorably bright and pink. Not the actual colour, but if a demeanour could be described in such a fashion, it's the word this author has landed on. The hair over her forehead cutely wobbles to and fro like a loving breeze has brushed it for her. She smiles at him as he plants the warmest kiss on her cheek, and she whispers, "I love you," and he reciprocates. But first he makes for the bathroom while she arises from the bed. They shower and dry themselves with the warm, soft, cuddly towels the motel has provided for them. The TV is on as Larry is watching the morning news. More war and terror scares. It's getting to be a daily occurrence, and the news people are having to come up with more scandal to keep the people on their daily high. Breakfast arrives with a knock on the door. Something simple and light. Larry's easy to please. Kylie's a bit more high maintenance, but they are both munching down to whatever the fare they fancied and ordered the night before. Back in the car to Kylie's house, they can't get the smiles off their faces. Larry's been wanting to see this place for 7 years since he gave him her address, and he sent her a book which she has cherished, along with everything else he has sent her. She's never known another human on this earth who's loved him this much, and unconditionally, and now physically. As perfect as any long-distance love can be, but they both know for it to be permanent, one of them will have to relocate. Larry has mind to look into it while he's in country. The car pulls up in the driveway. Frantic activity inside the house. The kids have made ready. Kylie's daughters are both home and have done more housework in 2 hours than they've done in the whole previous 12 months, even their own rooms. The older daughter emerged, the vivacious Melanie, 19 years old, brunette, always with the biggest smile, just like her mum. They got out of the car and embraced Larry. Embrace, full stop. Larry hugs his new stepdaughter like he would any family member of his own, and they felt like they'd known each other courtesy of Facebook. He had known the girls as long as their mum. They knew he loved her and could feel it in his communications with them, however sporadic. There was one occasion where he hadn't heard from Kylie for several months, and he got in touch with the girls just to ask how mum was. He never stopped caring about Kylie, the love of his life. Now they're unpacking belongings out of Kylie's dream machine and transporting it into the house. Big, strong Tony, Mel's strapping boyfriend, is on the scene to help Larry with the heavy stuff. Larry doesn't have an awful lot, is only staying for a short visit. Too short. He's looking forward to meeting the boyfriends. Now the 6 of them will be complete. Mama Kylie was determined not to miss out on love this year, while her daughter's got it all. That's just not fair. Tony was very tall, tan, Italian-American. He could cook. He was going to be cooking for them one night while they were together. He lived with Kylie and the girls in their home, but was very respectful and treated them like the princesses they were and deserved to be treated. He could sing and he liked falsetto, very Frankie Valli. But he liked the modern music, as did Mel. They were hip, you see, and dressed accordingly. Very fashionable for 2016. The younger daughter, Jennifer, a pretty blonde of 17, is still inside getting some decorations for Larry's entrance. They had gone overboard with a whopping great banner across the room. It made poor Larry blush. And the balloons, my! They didn't need to go to all that trouble, but it sure made Kylie's little heart jump. These girls were just so happy to see their mum happy after all these years of bombed-out relationships with bombed-out men. Here's a guy who's come from the other side of the world and was determined to make the most of it while he was amongst them. Sweet Jen has his boyfriend David, short, tall guy with a beard, who shows up in pictures a lot on Facebook with his girl. Young love is precious among the young, and Larry makes Kylie feel young right along with him. All the gear is brought into the house. They'll be eating at home tonight. Larry has offered to help with the cooking. This is a fiction novel, isn't it? He can stack a dishwasher okay, so long as he doesn't get sliced in the cutlery. They'll manage. His head's still spinning from the events of the previous days, and he's looking forward to just chilling on a couch somewhere with his lady right beside him, holding hands. It's 3 p.m. End of chapter 7. Dinner time! And they're having Italian. A little bird told Tony that Larry's favourite dish was lasagna. He also likes spaghetti, usually bolognese or some meaty dish, all catered for. Meatballs go well with it, so they had them as well. They'd all gone shopping the day before, while Kylie went to pick up her special visitor and got plenty of stuff. The house had enough food to last them for his stay, plus they'd be eating out quite a bit. In the kitchen where all the action was happening, Larry did whatever he was capable of and tried to learn and observe everything. He, Tony, and the girls were frantically going about the preparations. One liked supervising Larry as he was a novice and didn't cook much at home by himself. No one to impress, but now he's impressed and wants to impress with that, what he can do. Pretty impressive, just the same. Amazing what he can accomplish with supervision, just in case he messed up. All the preparation was done in about half an hour, and then waiting for the oven and other cooking devices to do their stuff. They're all congregating in the lounge watching some old western on TV. Well, they're eating spaghetti tonight. Might be appropriate. Jennifer tossed up a lovely salad to go with it, and of course the prize, a big tray of steaming hot lasagna, just the way Tony's mama made it, with a secret sauce that even Kylie wasn't privy to. All washed down with a cold Coke. They still had vanilla Coke here too, nice and cheap in little Georgia. Around the table they got further acquainted. Larry's nervous, trying to strike up something to talk about. He hadn't shut up since he got there. For some reason, when there's food in front of him, you're like Homer Simpson. Can't talk, eating. But he pays as much attention and throws something in occasionally. He finds out some stories about the earlier childhood of the younger generation, and even Jennifer shares some vague recollections of her father, who was Kylie's first husband when he lived with them. The girl still got to spend lots of time with him in the years following and went on some awesome adventures. The guy was rich. But where is real rich? Rich is a home with love and people who love each other and aren't starving or fighting or boozing or out clubbing and breaking the law. They might do some night clubbing or karaoke while Larry's in town, but they are mostly of sober habits. Larry really missed having family around him. He recalls and retells stories of his own family gatherings where he used to eat around a dinner table when his siblings gradually left home and brought back suitors into the family. The dynamics work pretty well on both continents. The mother load, lasagna, is served. First one to say, hand me the ketchup, got it across the hand, and it was a heavy glass bottle. Ouch. Should have used his non-fork hand. He didn't end up pouring any ketchup on it. Not sure why there would even be ketchup on the table. When that sore hand was born, it was called tomato sauce, or more generically, sauce. Everyone knows what you mean. The conversation turns to their adventures in school. Jennifer is the baby of the group and still at it. Kylie can't wait till they're all out of school and done with the indoctrination. Homeschooling would have been better, but with 1 year left, it's hardly an issue. She plods on and was always quite bright. Just such a beautiful American family who made an Aussie nobody feel welcome in their home. He just wished he could stay, but this is only going to be a short visit. There'll be plenty of places to visit and eat out. Dessert. Sweet Mel has prepared a concoction of her own desired around Georgia peach. Larry likes peaches and most stone fruit, particularly the type where you don't have to peel the skin. This is served like peaches and cream with additional ice cream and strawberries and a hint of custard. Make you want to slap your grandma. The family laugh and joke together and clear away their own utensils from the table. The dishwasher will be going to town tonight without leaving the kitchen. The evening spent relaxed and all enjoying each other's company as loving families do and should. Discussing what will be on their agenda next day, Larry and Kylie have discussed lots of great eating places. They're both fans of Cajun food and will go visit Chef Henry's. A trip there wouldn't be complete without some Jesse to Planet's bridging audio in the car, so Larry uses his skill and downloads some stuff to stick in the iPod dock. No one in 2016 uses old CDs much anymore. Even DVDs have become rare while people own set-top boxes or smart TVs and subscribe to Netflix, etc. The party subsides with full and satisfied bellies. The kids head off to bed, while Kylie brings out her old acoustic guitar. She and Larry serenade each other till the late hours. The lights go out, the happy couple drift off to their nightly repose. End of chapter 8. The family arrives on Larry's first morning in the house, his Shorty's house, the house of love to him. Today they're doing some more sightseeing and trying out that Chef Henry's Cajun food. If he'd ever eaten Cajun food, Larry couldn't remember, apart from Cajun spices or Cajun chicken meals that were sometimes promoted at McDonald's or KFC back in Australia. He was just excited to try it with Kylie. Lots of things he tried with her were always exciting. They pull up to Chef Henry's and were ushered to their seats. It's dine-in, but takeaways also available. The waiters were pleasant. One was from Louisiana. Larry wants to try alligator meat. Being a great carnivore, he was very angry about the prompting of some vegans and vegetarians who tried to convince him that eating meat was immoral. He wasn't going to spend the rest of his life going without meat. Now he calls himself a militant meat eater and will try anything new once. There's another place Kylie told him about where they eat bison and buffalo meat. Burgers. Larry loves burgers. The Cajun was fine, better than expected, and he thanked the staff politely. They love non-local, especially foreign visitors. Larry liked dropping the G'day Dundee style. It's a cliche in Australia, but it's what the Americans like to hear. When they come to Australia, first just drops out without us really being aware. The G-bomb. In the afternoon, they visited Kennesaw Mountain, the famous Civil War battlefield of the Atlanta campaign from 1864. Larry had visited Gettysburg when he was in Pennsylvania, so it was fitting he wanted to acquaint himself with the history of the local area of his lady Kylie. They also checked out the Etowah Indian mounds and other historical places nearby. That evening, Kylie took Larry to meet some of her siblings who were very anxious to meet him. They were also planning a trip to Florida to meet her parents who lived down there. Larry so looked forward to walking on a beach, perhaps the famous Miami. That would be a big treat, to be able to tell his family back home that he had been there. Kylie's sister Shauna was very inquisitive. She'd heard of Larry and remembered a bouquet he sent Kylie for her birthday many years earlier. These Americans seemed fascinated by Australian accent, and Larry was only too happy to oblige. She asked about their relationship, where he'd come from, all the mushy details big sisters usually ask. This family were very protective of their younger siblings and children. Anyone, Kylie was the best looking and sweetest of them all. A few days later they did venture to Florida. Larry wanted to get a nice bunch of flowers for Kylie's mum. It's a thoughtful gesture Larry came up with on his own. Mum Minnie was impressed, as was her father, a real classic American gentleman of bygone era. Both parents were getting on in years, but were very pleased to finally meet a man who could capture their daughter's heart. Larry didn't drink alcohol, but the men did get together and acquaint themselves. The whole evening was hospitable, jovial, and merry. The young couple were bedded down for the night. They fell fast asleep. The next morning was beach day. Miami, yes, dreamed Larry as he lay there. The sun would soon visit them as it did on his first day here, and of course every day of his earthly life, but here in the northern hemisphere it arcs clockwise. They are treated to a tropical breakfast courtesy of Kylie's mum, who was a singer in her own right, and not too shabby in the kitchen. The whole family were engaged in an annual Christmas pageant that Larry had hoped to one day get to see. He guaranteed them a lifelong friendship, should, God forbid, things not work out marriage-wise. This couple are mature and realistic in spite of their feelings for one another. They had all the time in the world. It just took months to save finances to do what they wanted, and both were willing to sacrifice. Here on Miami Beach the sun shone down, not a cloud above them save a few white patches in the distance, nothing to worry about. They held hands walking along the beach. Romantic. Larry couldn't help himself and broke into song. Next thing he had his arm around his lovely Kylie, and she was singing and smiling along with him. She couldn't get the smile off her face. She loved it when Larry broke into spontaneous song because it was from his heart. That was all he had to offer his lady at short notice. They got burger and fries for lunch at Chick-fil-A, another place Larry had always wanted to go. Kylie loved it there too. After lunch they drove the long road trip back to Ackworth and home. The girls were jealous they didn't get to vacation with their grandparents. Larry and Kylie were off to Tennessee next. In Chapter 9, Tennessee. When you hear the whistle blow and into the bar, then you know the Tennessee is not very far, is the opening theme of this excursion. They're going to visit Chattanooga. Larry's having the time of his life. The classic purple majesty of the Ruby Falls and Lookout Mountain. He made sure he got plenty of imagery and photos of he and Kylie holding hands with the classic backdrop. He kissed her. He couldn't help it, and she didn't seem to mind. The tourists filmed it, and they were eventually tagged on social media. The vision had the backdrop of the waterfalls and an embrace, much like the movies. The right sunlight and camera angle, everything. And it wasn't a short smooch either. The video went viral, making the nightly news on the West Coast. Within a couple of days, once word had gotten out that one of them was an Australian tourist, Larry's media back home got into the story. He remembered back in 1997 an incident where his cousin's future husband and his friends caught a tornado on film, which also made the news back home. Now it's happened to him and his hopeful future wife. Once checkbook journalism stepped in, the happy couple got an exclusive interview on Atlanta's CNN. They're TV stars in their own right. Once it was known Kylie and Larry were both songwriters. Well, let's just say they got their big break. Larry is, of course, a radio star back home. Kylie has recorded, but not commercially, and not sold much to brag about yet. They met the right contacts in Atlanta, right place, right time, and all because of one lucky kiss under a waterfall. They're not going to believe this back home. Larry's family and growing number of friends back home in Australia are watching it on morning TV, and upon hearing his name they feel extremely proud. His breakfast radio host wants in on the action, and the station calls the US and get the scoop. 15 minutes of fame. The photographer was very gracious and sold the royalties to CNN for $30,000 and gave the happy couple 2/3 of it. He was still happy to get 10 grand off his work without having to show on camera. Larry almost forgot he had to come home as well. At least he had a ticket booked. Needless to say, all their expenses had been reimbursed. He decided to take Kylie back with him. The sky's the limit from here. The following Sunday they were back in church. Kylie and her brother William sang great gospel together. They were scheduled to perform together with their honoured guests from Australia singing harmonies along with Kylie, possibly the musical highlight of their visit. These guys were TV stars, and the pastor was mighty proud to have them back in church and to meet Kylie's friend. Their rendition of one of Kylie's own compositions brought the house down and tears to many eyes. It was a moving experience. Financed by their newfound fame and fortune, this couple decided to fly north to Washington, D.C. to check out the national capital. While strolling around the gardens of the White House, they spy the President and First Lady having tea with a Secret Service dude. Larry inappropriately burst out in his Aussie accent, "Yo, Bazza, me old mate, how's it going?" Much to his surprise, the President recognised them from the waterfall video and says, "Ah, you two, I've been anxious to meet you lovers. How are you enjoying your stay, Larry?" Dumb question. Larry looks toward the love of his life with an expression on his face and tells Mr. O exactly what he needed to know. Say no more. "Sir, it is one of the finest daughters your nation has ever produced, and I would be honoured to take her off your hands." Obama invites the entire tour party they were with into the corner tables of a large indoor dining hall for a bit of an informal mingle with the group. It's an election year. He can't count on the votes of the two celebrities, but that didn't bother him. The elections are rigged anyway. He still managed to offer them a ride aboard Air Force One, back to Atlanta. He just so happened to be headed there that night for a drink of vanilla coke. No, just some secret business. One of his daughters was doing a recital down there with some interstate school spectacular. What a coincidence, they happened to be there that afternoon. Their commercial flight home was reimbursed. They offer to have the fares direct deposited to the bank accounts of the girls back home. They'll get a pleasant surprise when they check their bank balances next morning. Back home in Ackworth, they're watching the news on TV and something has stirred. The Yellowstone caldera. This could be big. This could be real big. If it blows, it might affect Larry's chances of returning to Australia. Possibly all aviation in the US would be grounded, much like on 9/11. They're wishing now they stayed with the President. At least they could take shelter in his bunker. End of Chapter 10. 9. Watching the evening news from CNN, Larry, Kylie, Tony and the girls had gotten some takeout from Ted's Montana Grill. Larry wanted to try buffalo meat, so they got burgers. Nice greasy food once in a while. Larry had very short whiles back home. And don't forget the fries. So they're munching away in front of the TV. Larry gets an idea to go outside in the early summer evening and watch the moon rise. It's bright orange and full, just on dusk. The air got still and quiet. The clouds seemed to have dissipated. Conversation suddenly became hushed like the air out of a deflating balloon minus the fart. The dog stirred. This same dog that kicked off the relationship 8 years earlier started running around in circles frantically about the backyard. Their mascot was cheering like the team had already won. Only her barking had a more urgent tone about it, like she was, "Help! Somebody! Does anybody speak dog? I need an interpreter." She jumped on Kylie's lap. The humans are all seated in an outdoor furniture setting, watched the full moon, when suddenly the earth rumbled beneath their feet. At first it felt like a passing heavy vehicle on the road out front of the house, only without the rattle and noise. Signs of an earthquake. The TV in the living room suddenly cut away from the live feed, which had turned to white noise. The anchor is reporting that they had lost their connection from the ground commentator in Wyoming. 300 million breaths simultaneously inhale American air, much of it polluted, and possibly 10 million didn't inhale at all. When the gravity of the eruption had finally hit, sweet Jennifer burst into tears. No terrorism, no Russian or rogue nuke. This was a natural phenomenon, an extinction-level event of our times. Larry will definitely not be flying back to Australia any time soon via the west coast of the United States. "Looks like you're stuck here, my dear," says Kylie as she strokes his forearm. He leans over and kisses her. They all get up for a group huddle. Larry kisses the girls, who are both crying, and they all heave that great unspoken "what do we do now" sigh. Events several hundred miles away have instantaneously changed their world. Things will never be the same again, and what food they have in the house will have to do till it runs out. Good thing Kylie had been paying attention to alternative media and had a secret stash of food, silver bullion, ammo, and whatever survival essentials they would need. She'd been researching it for years. The car had a full tank, but that would only last a finite amount of time, and Kylie only had a finite amount of fuel with her stash. Fortunately, this night the power was still on in Georgia, but it wouldn't be long before the ash cloud would drift across and the economic ripple effect would be felt by all Americans. To top it all off, the funny irony of it all, old Snoop was in San Francisco on some business errand. That city met a suitably biblical ending within hours. The magnitude of the quake was getting near the unlucky number on the Richter scale. The cosy American life they had all loved and Kylie had grown up with for 40 years would be gone or changed forever. Larry ponders this as he eyes over the take-out boxes for their dinner. He suddenly felt hungry for the leftover food, but decided to fridge it all for the next day, if they still had electricity. On the TV came the familiar image of the president trying to reassure Americans as he had been planning for such an emergency all along. Curfews were imposed. The poor among inner city dwellers didn't waste any time trying out their riot skills, and the police and National Guard were only too happy to hone their law enforcement techniques and practice on the populace. Martial law, not just local either, it was nationwide. All guns were to be confiscated. What? How are we going to defend ourselves against the looters, you fool? Hillary isn't president yet, is she? No, Hillary will never be president, not in 2016. Obama has signed or invoked executive orders suspending the Constitution. All gold or any substitute metal used for currency was to be confiscated. Cash will be worthless once inflation bit. The mint was temporarily shut down. Camps built by Halliburton and financed by its and Saudi oil revenue were opened almost on cue. Ah, squealed the elite with delight. Time to implement the plan. And those sheeple were asleep, all because they come after the likes of those. Of course, they came after the likes of those who were awake. No one could sleep that night, however. They just sat glued to their television set, these 5 souls in a house in Ackworth, Georgia, USA, watching unfolding coverage. Poor Jennifer was still hysterical on the phone to her boyfriend who was coming over to see her in the morning. She wanted him there right now. It might not have been safe to drive at that time of night. By about 1 a.m. Atlanta had erupted. The curfew was predictably only respected by those who could spell curfew or tell the time on the clock when curfew went into effect. Rioters were just rounded up into windowless vans and carted off to Area 51 or perhaps other camps around the country. Eventually his family went to bed. Lights went out and Larry and Kylie were able to hold each other till they too drifted off to sleep. End of chapter. Chapter 11. They all awake to an eerie brown hue over the sun, and to their west it looked thick, like the dark haze coming over to consume them, a monster gradually spreading its giant poisonous blanket over the country to suffocate them all with no mercy or remorse in its sheer weight. Kylie checks her news feed and has discovered her favourite broadcaster, Alex Jones, has been taken off the air. His Present Planet and InfoWars websites have been taken down and she gets worried. Has he been taken already? Will they come after her? She breaks into a reprise of her daughter's chorus the night before. Larry Hurry cuddles her in his arms. A thirst grips him as it occurred he may have tasted his last ever vanilla Coke on this earth. One of the girls has turned on the TV to catch some more news from overnight and immediately wonders why. It's the same old stuff, but this time the riots have spread everywhere and people are just being rounded up. Seems the security personnel and army, National Guard, you name it, had all been programmed to respond to a cue. They had addresses of known troublemakers, just like in Nazi Germany or America during wartime, when they went after Japanese or any citizens they thought might be sympathetic to the overthrow of public order. Oh, and not many Muslims. They had rights, you see. Group huddle. They had agreed should anyone come to the door, they'd all go quietly. The authorities knew Larry was a foreign national. He had registered with Australia's Department of Immigration and Foreign Affairs, so his family or any loved ones back home who might have cared would know he was safe. He had in particular a teenage niece at home who was worried, sick and frantic when the news broke worldwide. All Larry could do was get on an internet device and shoot off a message to let them know he was okay, then blackout. Offline. The internet to this house was taken offline. Kylie doesn't know if it was everywhere or just her. Then the knock on the door. Why bother? These goons had the manpower and forced to just barge their way in, but it's good cop, bad cop routine in case the residents were to go without much resistance. Kylie knew her guns and ammo would be confiscated and whatever food left in the house would be for the starving masses left wandering around in the ensuing nuclear winter that lay ahead. 5 of them were rounded up and bustled into a waiting black van out the front. Jennifer was hysterical again, not knowing if David was on his way or whether or not she would ever see him again. As events transpired, she never will see him again in this lifetime. He dared to venture out around 4 a.m. to go visit her and was shot by an unknown curfew enforcer. It's not known whether the enforcer even had a uniform. They could be just gangsters out roaming the streets incognito. Inside the van was like inside an ambulance with tinted windows, only they were cross-legged. They were cross-legged on the hard metallic floor, hands bound behind their backs. Was it only 2 days ago they were famous on TV meeting the president and riding Air Force One? Now these people who work for their same illustrious leader have all their lives in their hands and driving them to humiliation. This scene reminded Larry of stories he'd read of the Holocaust where families were rounded up and separated children from parents wives from husbands. This surely could not be happening to them in 2016 when a natural disaster was unfolding on the other side of the country. If it was for their own protection, why did they have to be so forceful? Why were the women sobbing? Why did they all have to be afraid of? What did they all have to be afraid of? They just sat silently in the back, afraid to speak to each other in case they were being eavesdropped or some voice from the front hollered, "Quiet back there!" It was hardly worth the effort. Their strength was sapped. They all sat and prayed quietly, holding hands. A few hours later the vehicle stopped. Larry thought to himself, "I wonder how they managed to get us all this way without even stopping for fuel. They must have had a plan and knew how far they were taking us. It could have been Area 51 or some secret location, one of many dotted about the country." They didn't hear the sound of the driver's cabin doors opening, but the rear doors opened seemingly automatically. Two men in white apparel were standing on the road outside just behind the vehicle and commanded them to all step out. One of them untied the prisoners who would now be fugitives. They were entertaining angels unawares. The pair had slowed the vehicle to a stop while the driver and his passenger in the front had been put into a deep sleep and probably wouldn't be woken for several hours, giving their captives time to get away. The older looking of the two visitors gently instructed them, charging Larry as the oldest of the mortal party to follow back down the road from whence they came until the sun went down. He reached out and removed Larry's spectacles. Upon instant contact, his vision was miraculously restored after 47 years and reinvigorated to carry on the journey. The two angels disappeared out of sight, much to the astonishment of the onlookers. The two younger girls giggled and gasped in awe. End of chapter 12. Nobody knew it, but the black van was taking them all to their deaths. The drivers had been instructed not to speak to the people and not to give them food or water. They were all indeed headed for Area 51. It had all been planned. Thousands of similar vehicles, all powered by a mysterious energy source that had never been commercially available. That would have put Big Oil out of business. Hence the non-necessity to refuel had been contracted to transport certain known individuals or groups they deemed might be trouble. Prisoners were to be rounded up into these internment camps and housed in little more than container or storage sheds with no air conditioning. Couples and families were all split up and plonked randomly with other people, total strangers. The accommodation would not have mattered since they were all worked typically 12-hour shifts without a break. Those who survived would limp back to their sheds and rest. They were given rations from the vegetable gardens that lined the camps. No one knew where the mysterious black fertilizer came from, but it had a very eerie charred smell about it. It seemed to do the job, and people had more pressing issues to worry about, like their very survival. The more able-bodied among the camp dwellers were worked around the clock until they dropped from exhaustion, hunger, or other causes. Limp bodies were then thrown dead or alive into what looked like great kilns, much like the ovens of Auschwitz. On the hour, these kilns were switched on. Several thousands of volts of electricity would pulverize whatever was inside, and the ensuing black ooze that came out the other side would be used to fertilize the garden of whatever might have fed the survivors. No one was supposed to know this. Meanwhile, Larry, Kylie and their family, as they will be from now on, found their way to a turn-off on the road. They were headed just as the sun was setting. Larry could see a light in the distance that didn't look natural or of human invention. It rested upon a little farmhouse a few thousand feet from the main road. The angel had instructed him with a secret password that he was used, and not to reveal to anyone. The word must have been of some angelic origin, tongues of angels. He had to knock 3 times on the door. The people inside guarding the door were to answer, "Who is it?" and Larry had to give the password. Once inside, the password was supernaturally erased from the memory of all who heard it. Only he jolted when another visitor came to the door and used it. Like the internment camps, these small houses were dotted about the country and would soon be around the world as well, since the tribulation would be worldwide. The houses were modest and inconspicuous and supernaturally protected. The only way a human could enter is by knocking on the door and using the password. They were much more comfortable than the camps, but still modest enough not to be conspicuous to looters or the federal enforcers. Occasionally someone would knock and respond to "Who is it?" with their own names or something other than the password. In these cases, the guard behind the door would slide open a shutter to the side and converse with the stranger. There would always be a plate of hot food or something waiting, sealed with cling wrap. If the food ever got down to room temperature or cold or still fresh, it would be consumed by someone in the house. They didn't keep money. The food was 21st century manna. Their water was literally on tap, but supernaturally provided. It would also be offered along with the food. These houses typically accommodated up to 12 people, usually with the eldest male or couple leading the group. There were already 6 in this house, so the extra 5 were welcomed right on dusk and supper time. They hadn't eaten all day. Tony could cook, so his skills were found very useful as he got chatting with the other chefs in the house. Sweet Jennifer was hungry and just laid into the manna like she'd never eaten it before. None of them had. It was a great experience, and one wondered why the Israelites of old were sick of it day after day. Although they lasted 40 years, these believers only had to wait out 7. After supper, Jennifer just dropped to sleep in her bunk. The rest of them chatted and got acquainted with their housemates, who were all delighted to have an Australian among them. Larry could tell them of his adventures and worldwide travels as well. When these guys were exhausted and all trotted off to bed one by one, Larry and Kylie lay together in their beds listening to the sound of the rain on the roof as they drifted off in blissful slumber, acclimatizing themselves to their fate and new environment. Chapter 13. They are all awoken with the daily shofar from their angel, not always seen but ever present. Some housemates are already wide awake or have stirred. It'll be a daily routine. The newcomers are taken a bit to get used to, but the nervousness of the younger females has dissipated. There are other girls in the house they can make friends with. This family had only arrived at the house a week earlier, and having been prompted to do so by the Holy Spirit prior to the eruption. The father of the family is Mark. He's about a month older than Larry. His wife, Rebecca, is 44. They have a grown-up son and 3 daughters in the house with them. Craig is 20 and was going to follow in his dad's footsteps and become a pastor. He's called to preach. He still will. They'll now have a much smaller congregation than they did have. Samantha, who is 18 with long brown hair, just graduated high school and is looking forward to going to college to become a nurse. Holly, tall, slim and blonde, and 16, wanted to become a teacher, and chubby Linda, who still had a difficult time getting used to the new diet. At 14, she was still the baby of the house. Mark and Rebecca were pastors of a small church farther back down the road towards Atlanta. Yes, all except Larry so far are Georgians. This blesses Kylie, who'll be getting further acquainted with Rebecca as they chat girly stuff in the kitchen. About a week before the eruption, Pastor Mark was prompted to gather clothes, Bibles and other equipment with his family and move them quietly to a house God would show them. They had to carry everything and not use a motor vehicle. They would all be supernaturally provided for. Rebecca was given a dream in which she saw the vision of the house from the outside and layout from within. It will be their new home for the next 7 years, and they will be in it when the disaster hit. The angel spoke to her in the dream. The same older angel who led Larry and his family to the house later on issued these instructions. Go to a house that I'll show you. You and your husband are to be pastors of a group of 12, including your children. I will bring others into the house to make the numbers, and when the number is sealed, no more are to enter the house as permanent dwellers. There will be thousands of houses like this around the country, and several million around the world that the Lord has put aside. You will communicate by prayer to the Father. He will send angels to guide, instruct, or protect. Your food will be manna from heaven, plus anything you can grow and cultivate yourselves. You will be provided for with bread in the morning and meat in the evening. Cooking and presentation will be left for your imaginations. On Fridays you will receive a double portion for the occupants of the household and none on the Sabbath. Water will be provided every day using the taps as they are operated conventionally. Your shoes and clothes will not wear out. No one will starve. Do not worry about poison in the ground, water or food. You will be supernaturally protected. I will give any new residents a password which will be used as a key to be allowed to join the group. The property will have a spacious yard for outdoor recreation. So they all up and moved, not knowing where they were headed, very like Abraham in Genesis. Or when they got there, it was like the Israelites in Exodus, with hopefully less complaining. Linda, lol. There's always one. This was her family, and although she had discipline issues, she was forced to adapt to her new surroundings. As the kids of her age group would say, it sucked. But they are more narrow or shallow in their perception of the things of God. Parents can train and raise a child up only so far and love them to infinity and beyond. But ultimately it's the child's choice to submit or rebel. Linda will come around. It just might take a bit of time and more work, mostly for Rebecca. When more teenagers and young adults are added to the family, it made things a bit more exciting and perhaps distracting. Holly was a sweet 16-year-old. She could play the piano. This house was provided with one. She would get along with Kylie like the proverbial combustible residents. Although this house was safe, Holly wrote her own songs, as did Kylie. And they would get to share their compositions, all God-honouring and some secular repertoire they had intergenerational knowledge of. Kylie was mostly country, of course, but Holly had a taste for the more contemporary known artists such as Justin Bieber, Bruno Mars, or One Direction. Such acts would never record again under the new regime gripping the planet. Her greatest love for the Almighty God, she served and wrote the best love songs to him. Samantha had just finished high school and was aged right in between Mel and Jennifer and would get along well with them. She would sing and harmonise along with Holly on her stuff and was also pretty pumped about the piano in the house. They were going to be living off the electricity grid and do their own cooking by outdoor fire, barbecue every night. Sam was a great cook, as was her mum. There would always need to be a roster for the cooking and always extra pairs of hands and minds to train his skills that everyone could learn. Craig was already a student in Bible college when they evacuated. The whole family were at home at the same time and moved out. The same time they moved out. He may have been home on a study break just as well, or he might not have gotten reunited with his family or been able to find them without supernatural guidance. He was a bit of a prayer warrior, him and his dad. He'll be 21 later this year. Okay, there's room for one more in the house, and that waits for a later chapter. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14. There are 11 of them in the house now. The routine typically has consisted of the angel preparing things during the night, much like Santa Claus leaving gifts. So it's like Christmas every morning, just while their home is being set up. He would leave food there for the family to prepare and cook, manna from heaven in various bread products such family member liked, sometimes steaming hot. There would be enough butter. It was basically supermarket home delivery, which cost them nothing. Kylie and Rebecca often salivated at the thought of never having to spend money at grocery shopping again. If there were any special instruction or warning, the angel would speak to Pastor Mark or Larry for anything pertaining to his own family, and the women would see things in their dreams like they were asleep, anything that required visual detail. When they arose in the mornings, they would gather around the table for prayer to thank the Lord for their food and any provisions they had received during the night. And there was quite a bit as the family were accumulating their stuff. Sometimes even sporting equipment would be delivered for outdoor amusement. Larry was keen to introduce them all to the popular Australian pastime of cricket. The equipment was as sturdy and authentic as you would find in any sporting goods store, even a metallic gold-coloured tennis racket. The yard was spacious enough to run around and play football matches, should anyone desire. One morning Melanie was first to venture outside, and lo, to her surprise, staring in the face of the shiniest white horse! Looked thoroughbred. Sure enough, in the drop box overnight, that is what they had come to nickname the depository, where the angel would leave items that it could hold. She found the saddle, reins, and paraphernalia and knew precisely how to dress the beast. It was hers. Well, not exactly. They all had to share, but we're living there for a while, and there'll be plenty of time to try this fine specimen. It looked as tame as if it had been sent directly from heaven, which it was. Just before breakfast that morning, the girls had all come out to look it over. It even impressed Larry and Mark. They all had something to thank God for. Mel and Jennifer, being the horse experts, were charged with the animal's upkeep, but everyone who wanted to got a chance to ride. It would be kept in the stable out back. They had a small area under cover for chickens and keeping wood dry and any other tools and outdoor utensils they would accumulate for life on this farm, and it was taking shape to become. Life on this farm was closest thing to heaven this family could get. They barely heard any sound from the outside world apart from birds that flew overhead or the occasional distant explosion if it were loud enough to carry to them. Other than that, it was just them. The night skies were clear and put on spectacular sunsets, particularly with what was coming from the west. It was almost like no one knew they were there. They were supernaturally protected from any environmental harm that might come upon the country. Apart from the occasional disagreement over food preparation or grumbling from Linda, they were a peaceful living bunch. Until one day the routine was disturbed. The 12th house guest showed up. His 15-year-old skinny kid with brown hair, Stephen, who was just on his summer break after 9th grade, stumbled upon his house. He was hungry and looked emaciated. When Larry saw him, he thought of himself at that age going through school. The others were scattered about the house and yard. It was about 4 in the afternoon when Stephen walked up and knocked. A shudder ran down Kylie's spine as she remembered what happened last time there was a knock on the door at a house she resided in. They'd almost forgotten their former life and didn't seem to miss it that much. Sweet Holly looked up from the backyard and saw Stephen coming down the path and thought, another boy. She loved God, but she was still a teenager and a pastor's daughter. She had to remember that. What would the boy think of her, though? Larry is inside when Stephen knocks. Who is it? Password. Holly jumps. Larry lets him in. The password is again forgotten. Stephen is introduced around. When he spies Holly, it was like Larry and Kylie all over again, only a teenage version. And at first sight, they didn't even enjoy a multi-year online courtship. Kylie deep down feels a bit cheated, but she's happy. Number 12 has finally arrived. There'll certainly be enough food. The rules are explained to the newcomer Stephen as he sits down to eat. He's a believer, but still has to be prompted to say grace. We thank the Lord every day for our food here. It's delivered here every night. It's explained to him. It's going to be a job keeping him and Holly apart. Pastor Mark and Larry sat him down after supper and explained a few things man to man. The women are rearranging sleeping quarters. Stephen will be bunked down with the two immediately older men, while the teenage girls are roomed together. Since Craig's parents and his sisters are all in the one family, Larry has taken young Stephen under his wing as an adopted son and younger brother to Melody and Jennifer. So his initial infatuation with Holly doesn't disturb the dynamic as far as the family are concerned. Eventually everyone's space and relationship to one another are respected, and it's accepted that Stephen and Holly could be closer than brother and sister. If the love bond is of God, it will strengthen and remain chaste, so a keen eye is kept on the happy couple, especially from the pastors. Young Linda is struck with an outrage of jealousy and gets into one of her snooty moods. Something transpires to provoke Stephen to call her by a one-syllable word that had never been used in the house. He immediately apologised, but she has gone off to sulk. They'll probably not be the best of friends in the house. She's jealous of her sister. As the night winds down and prayers are said around the table before they retire to their rooms, reconciliation is achieved, and this is how things are worked out in the house. They'll all be living here together for 7 years, and bad relationships among the house can't be allowed to fester. End of chapter 15. The morning routines of the house would typically consist of the family retrieving any goodies from the drop box and preparing the food for the day and having their breakfast. One would go out to the shed and check on the chickens. About the same time the horse arrived, they discovered a cow who would give them milk every morning. They were living quite comfortably. After breakfast they would sit around and do their Bible studies. The younger school-age ones were unwittingly introduced to homeschooling. Rebecca handled all that. Larry or Kylie would lead the Bible studies. Pastor Mark was in charge of the Sunday services. On a good day they would have their Sunday church outside. Holly would wheel her piano out, which was quite light and portable. They'd come by an acoustic guitar which Larry could play, and they had plenty of repertoire composed by Kylie and other more familiar items that people knew. Quite often on a Saturday night the angel would appear to Mark or whoever was taking the service and inform him what was going to happen or what he would preach. Sometimes he had something on his heart. If his family ever wanted anything from the Lord, all any member needed to do was ask in prayer, and provided it was needed and asked with pure motive, it was granted. Anything material would be given them overnight or next day, from new clothes or shoes. Nothing wore out, but they liked variety and circulation, or sporting and leisure equipment, or food, drink, etc. Things were supernaturally kept cool or preserved since electricity was not available. They didn't need cash, or any work they did was limited to basic tidying up or gathering what food grew or was produced out in the yard. The yard had fruit trees much like the Garden of Eden, but no forbidden tree this time. In the first year they tried their hand at growing wheat. There was only the 12 of them to feed, so it wasn't much to harvest, grind to flour and make dough and bread. The manna was still being provided as well. The vegetable patch was fertilised by animal refuse or any nonsense that lay around the yard. Linda hated when it was her turn to gather it up. Any leftover bread would leave out for the passers-by. The Lord knew the hearts of the people, and the food was given freely. If any approached with intent to rob or harm the people, the angel would stand with his flaming sword and they would walk on by. There were a lot of desperate and hungry people walking on the highway. The 12 were safe only so long as they stayed on the property or in the house. Once they ventured onto the highway, they were at the mercy of the world. As they were living here, there was no need to venture out to look for anything additional, since they only had to ask the Father and he would provide in Jesus' name. One Saturday night the angel instructed Pastor Mark on a special surprise for the following morning's service. Relations among family members had been very cordial, and love had grown and blossomed between the young couples. As they were all seated at the church service, Mark called his wife forward to face the congregation. He had a special announcement and presentation to make. Rebecca smiled because she knew what was afoot. They called Larry and Kylie up, followed by Tony and Melanie. The couples were asked to face each other and hold hands. Pastor Mark asked Larry, "Larry, do you love Kylie? Do you take her to be your lawfully wedded wife, to honour, love and protect her from this day forward and forever?" "I do," beamed Larry. "Kylie, do you love Larry? will you take him to be your lawfully wedded husband, to honour, love and respect him from this day forward and forever? Kylie by this time had turned into a blubbering wreck. All she could do was nod and sob, but the body language was sufficient for an affirmative to all witnesses. This ceremony was a mere formality in the sight of God for it to be proper, and some sleeping rearrangements had to be made. He then proceeded to Tony and Melanie, who were an ecstatic smile that just gleamed between rosy cheeks in the sunlight. Tony, do you love Melanie? Do you take her to be your lawfully wedded wife, to honour, love and protect her from this day forward and forever? I do. Melanie, do you love Tony? Will you take him to be your lawfully wedded husband, to honour, love and respect him from this day forward and forever? Well, duh, she giggled and hugged him like it was the first time they'd seen each other in forever. Well then, by the power vested in me by Almighty God and witnessed by all here this day, I now pronounce you husbands and wives. Pastor Mark nodded and stepped back. A shofar sounded in the distance. Holly had snuck around to a piano and played some traditional wedding music. Inside there was a feast prepared for them on the dining table. While they were outside celebrating the wedding banquet and miraculously appeared. Hot food and traditional American fare. There was going to be a great celebration in the house today and on into the night and early hours. Samantha and her mother were the ones to rearrange the beds to accommodate the newlyweds. Chapter 16. The newlywed couple settled easily into the wedded bliss. The routine was fun and days were peacefully made up of the work and recreation and the cushy life they were enjoying every day, ever thankful to God that he was their provider and redeemer. The years flew by and the teenagers grew up. By now even Linda was 21 and humbled herself to trust in the Lord as her Saviour. She was even helping more in the kitchen and around the yard without grumbling. There weren't any more ultra-platonic couplings in the house. The 12 all got along and matured in their growth and faith, except for one obvious couple they had to deal with. Stephen and Holly were married in this last year, much like the ceremonies of the previous chapter. Nobody seemed to get bored here. One night they were eating supper around a fire pit the older men had built. It was customary to do this on the cooler and longer nights just to get back to nature. They had lost all interest in and contact with the outside world and had no clue what was happening on the news, no TV, not knowing who was at war with who or cared even less. Only following the calendar and counting days, following seasons, feeding, clothing, entertaining, and enriching themselves while loving God and each other. If it had been the ordinary world and life outside prior to the Great Tribulation, this group might have been excused as some isolationist cult with wacky beliefs. Their beliefs were far from wacky. This night they were joined. Its fire pit, they were munching on hot manna damper, Aussie style, with golden syrup. Larry loved this and would have lived on it every day, but there was a lot of different food he could live on every day, so it circulated and that was just fine by Larry. The others all felt the same about their diet. The chickens were laying well. As the fowls aged, they'd be slaughtered to make good chicken meat. The cow's milk never curdled, it always stayed fresh and supernaturally cool. Something way cooler will happen tonight. They knew the time was near, the exact hour was a bit elusive for them. The Lord has his own timetable and the world has 24 time zones. Tick, tick, tick. They're sitting outside around the fire pit. The house is dark inside. They could see stars and a bright full moon resplendent. An eerie silence washes over them. The men are grasping their wives' hands, the older ones looking up to heaven, gazing at the twinkling spectacle. The ground rumbles again. This is the big earthquake, the big one, that will usher in the return of the Lord. It's felt worldwide like the axis wobbling to and fro. The dark sky appears to be slit apart, rolling up like a scroll to reveal the brightness of his coming. The sign of the Son of Man appears in the heavens. Their angel appears among them, 9 feet tall, and proclaimed the secret password they had used was his own name. They could all utter it amongst themselves. Even Larry thought to offer him some of the Australian damper and whatever cold beverages they had with them. To their surprise, he sat down and broke the damper a la Jesus, and they all followed suit. The girls had to pick up a piece from the communal plate, and they all had a communion with their angel. The angel commanded them to bow their heads reverently as he called upon the Father. Other angels joined in. The party's eyes were open. They could see into the supernatural. Angels all around the whole time they lived there. The angel out the front with the flaming sword. Angels by every window, ones who watched them as they slept. One on the roof over the whole house, protecting them from anything demonic. Then they all looked up as the sky brightened to a golden hue like dawn. They all stood up, and just as the last earthly mouthful of food was swallowed, Last gulps of water, it happened. The mortal will put on immortality, their bodies simultaneously transformed into bright beings of light, indestructible resurrection bodies. Wow, just wow. They've all linked hands with their angel. They can hear nothing but singing around them, a big booming archangel voice hollered down, "Come up hither." The other angels around their home had all been reassigned to other duties in the heavenlies. Their family angels, the only one with their group now, 12 of them. The husbands and wives still together, Mark and Rebecca, Larry, Kylie, Melly, Tony, Stephen and Holly, and the 4 singles. Jennifer joins hands with her mother Kylie. The remaining siblings have linked hands with each other, and up they go. They caught up together in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. The Lord Jesus Christ, their Redeemer and Saviour, who died for them, all of them, millions upon millions. Many predeceased who had been raised from the dead. It is now hard to tell them apart unless a soul knew someone in their earthly life. It made no difference. Families would be reunited, ancestors would meet young ones they never met on earth. The reunions and acquaintances would be the sweetest thing. All the solitaries were set in families or reunited with predeceased family. Whole families were escorted to their homes. The dual family of the previous chapter was separated temporarily to be reunited later, after being shown their allocated heavenly abodes. All these millions of redeemed want to do is exalt and worship their Saviour, whom they can see before their very eyes. Each of them have a desire to look around and explore. This feeling would never leave. Heaven is a huge place full of adventure, and have all eternity to look around and explore. Larry, Kylie and their family, including their son-in-law, get together until their turn to meet the Lord individually. He talks to them and looks on them with his piercing eyes full of love and acceptance and forgiveness. Larry has never known anything like it in all his years of looking for it on earth. He breaks down and falls to his knees. Kylie follows suit. They love each other so profoundly, embracing. Larry's eternal reward is to dwell in this place with Kylie and their daughter Jennifer in their mansion. Melanie will dwell with her Tony in the same place big enough to house them all. The neighbours are, guess who? Not far away are the friends they lived with their final 7 years on earth. Looks like the old buddies will be able to catch up again and gasbag about old times. They were very close. The wives all embraced and kissed each other. The kids did the same. They shared a big communal ranch, bigger than their yard back home. There was a great pond they could go swimming in and catch fish. The business happening on the earth would be of a later concern, and perhaps another novel or one compiled by a more eschatological expert. The millennial kingdom of Jesus Christ was ushered in on the earth. Whatever else went down, these families would be safe and, yes, live happily ever after. The end.